Welcome everybody to Connecting the Universe. Actually, this is Edge of the Rabbit Hole. Edge of the Rabbit Hole on Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, my co-host is Victoria Monday, and down in the chat room, Alina moderating the chat. We have a great episode coming up for you tonight. We have paranormal author and psychic medium John Russell with us. You've probably recognized him from his myriad books and, of course, television work that he's done. So we're just going to dive right into it. And so, John he's been a friend of mine online here for a long time. Haven't had him on the show before. Really happy to have him on the show now because he does have some really, really fascinating books. And John, welcome to the show, my friend.
Mike, I appreciate it so much. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate it. Victoria, good to meet you. And I'm really looking forward to tonight. Hope all the listeners really enjoy the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so too, because John, you're a very experienced individual. You're a psychic medium, been on, who knows how many, paranormal investigations. And you've written these fantastic books. So, what I'm curious about is, what led you from the investigations that you were doing, the experiences that you've had as a psychic medium, to actually writing about these things?
Well, what led me to that, I had kind of dabbled, I had written things off and on and been published a little bit. And there was, when I shot the TV pilot for the History Channel, which unfortunately never aired, my producer and I became friends, but we continued to work on trying to get me on TV. And he said, if you'll start a blog, an online blog, and just put some short snippets of some of the paranormal experiences you've had so that we can reference that when we talk to media people and say, well, to get an idea of what John's all about and what he's experienced, here's the link to the blog, and read a few of these short little snippets of things. And I started doing that. And then I was in my kitchen in my house one day, and it was like, it hit me like a thunderbolt. It was like, for me, now I've had probably thousands of literal, physical, paranormal manifestations in my life by now, things that have occurred on the physical plane. Other people have witnessed them. Other people have seen them, experienced them. And for all of that, some of the experiences I had and that I write about in Writing with Ghosts were so over the top, so phenomenal, even for my experiences, that it just hit me like a thunderbolt. And I said, I've got to expand these stories into their full form, tell everybody what happened, what I learned from this, what they can apply to their lives spiritually from this, and then expand it into a book and write it down. And that's going to be my psychic legacy. That's what I'm going to leave behind as an author. And I did that, and I really didn't know that I would write this series of books, that it would turn into this. And after I did that, people were like, well, when did all this start? And how did this start? And how was it like growing up with a psychic gift? And blah, blah, blah. And it was like I went back to my childhood and started there with my second book, A Knock in the Attic. And then 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities kind of came about because over the years, I've been a professional psychic for over 50 years now. And I've read for clients in over 40 countries. And a lot of my clients, the other side taught me techniques directly that I knew worked because the other side taught them to me and I used them and they worked. And I would tell my clients about these techniques in the readings. And one day, again, it's like a bolt out of the blue. It was kind of like more like, duh, why don't I sit down and write these techniques up into a book that people can use and strip away all the rigmarole, all the malarkey, all the stuff that really doesn't work, and get this down to the nuts and bolts, easy peasy. Here's the technique. I define it for you. I tell you what it is. I take you by the hand, lead you step by step through learning it, and then how to practice it, how to get good at it, and the real world application of it. I was like, okay, I've got to do that. So when that book hit, it was a bestseller on Amazon in 3 categories. It hit the #1 bestseller in Ghosts and Hauntings on Amazon, hit the number 86 and Barnes & Noble top 100 best-selling books. So obviously the demand for that was there. Everybody really reacted to that. And then it was just, I'd be sitting thinking, and it was like, oh my God, all of these things I've experienced in my life, I haven't even scratched the surface. And so the 4th book out just October last year, The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock. And then I've got one coming out summer this year, the Cansack ghost, and then more planned after that. So that was how everything started, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And there will be a follow-up to 20 ways to increase your psychic abilities. I was sitting there the other day and I thought, look, 20 techniques, if you take these and use these, there's enough in there to really, really change your life. And people have written to me from around the world and said, John, I've used the techniques and they work. And I thought I was done. I thought that was it. And it was like I was sitting there the other day and it was like, oh my God, this technique. And it's such a powerful technique. And this technique. And so there's going to be 20 more ways to increase your psychic abilities. That'll be coming out next year. So that's basically how the whole thing started into the authorship vein.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And, having, we've been connecting on social media for a while and having seen your work and all that. And I totally agree with this. 20 ways to increase your psychic abilities, because you've talked before about how, everybody, has these abilities, and it's a matter of, kind of like with anything, you can bang some keys on a piano and it's, you practice. So with psychic abilities, how does that work? What can we find in something like, 20 ways to increase your psychic abilities?
It's the exact same thing. Everybody is psychic to a degree, but just like the piano thing, not everybody's going to become Horowitz and go on the concert stage. Everybody plateaus with their psychic abilities. And what I do in 20 ways to increase your psychic abilities is I explain the technique. I tell you how to learn it. And then I tell you, look, unless you practice this consistently, it's either going to kind of leave you or going to kind of wane a little bit. And the analogy I always give people is like, look, you want to go to the gym and you want to be able to bench press 100 pounds. And you go to the gym and all you can bench press is 30 pounds. And you bench press that 30 pounds 3 times a week till you get up to 35, 40 pounds. And you go every week, and finally you're up to 60 pounds, and you go and you go and you go. Finally, you can bench press that 100 pounds. And it took you weeks, maybe months to get there. But you went every single week, 3 times a week. You didn't skip. You didn't miss. You finally got up to the 100 pounds. Now you go on vacation for 2 or 3 weeks. You eat and drink, and you just goof off, and you have fun. You go back to the gym. Oh, I can only get 80 pounds up now.
Yeah.
And then you got to build back up to the 100. So it's the exact same way with psychic principles. Using these tools and techniques, you start off with psychometry, the first chapter in the book, and you learn to do that. And you start getting a little bit successful with it. And then you go on vacation, or you get lazy, or, the playoffs are on, or whatever, this, that, and the other. I'll get to it later. And, when we say I'll get to it later, we raise our heads up and 3 weeks have gone by and we haven't done anything, right?
Yeah.
And so the gift has waned a little bit. The ability has waned a little bit, and you got to strengthen it and bring it back. So I always tell people, look, in psychic work as in everything else, consistency is the key.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I agree. I mean, there are some people, and I think this is what, where people get the hang up, because, some people are just naturally gifted. I always, the analogy I always end up using is baseball, is because, I was a player, and, a lot of people could just naturally step up there and boom, they're hitting home runs left and right.
Yeah.
And not everybody can do that, but
but they still have practice. Yeah,
right.
They still have to put in the work.
Somebody with enough practice can get up there and they can hit and all that sort of thing. And I think that's the same thing with psychic abilities. Is some people that are just naturally going to step up to the plate and boom, they're going to hit it out of the park. But
well, that's what I
people,
had. That's the way I grew up. And in spite of that, or maybe because of that, I determined that I was going to study everything that I could study, read everything I could, experience everything I could. How can I hone this? How can I make it better? How can I get more accurate? How can I chase the truth? How can I find out what works and what doesn't? And so that's what I did. So even if you have that natural ability, and in regard to that, just like you're mentioning, I tell people, I say, look, you may have inherently the genetics to run a sub-4 mile. But if you sit on the couch and watch TV and eat chips instead of getting out training, you're never going to run the sub-4 mile, even though you have the genetics for it. Yeah. So the potential is there, but you still have to put the work in.
Yeah. And so with you yourself, because you've been involved with this for a while. I mean, how does that work for you when you're on investigations and things like that? I mean, did that come for you naturally?
Yeah.
at the get, or was that something that you did have to work on and keep in practice as you were going on investigations and, filming for this pilot and all that sort of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's everything that I have came to me naturally, and I've always worked to develop it and to strengthen it, to learn more, to find out more, to try and understand more. We in the paranormal realm, for everything that we've done, we haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah.
It's just we know so little, and it's like, for example, with EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. I talked to this guy. Was on an interview, and one of the hosts was a professional musician and also a computer whiz.
Mhm.
So he said, John, he said, I can take, with my software, I can analyze any sound, any noise, any bit of music, any note, any voice, any frequency, anything that's sound. I can put it in my computer. I can bend it, warp it, determine its origin, do anything I want to with it. But he said, with EVP, I can put those voices in there and I can hear them. I can analyze them. I cannot find the frequency that they're on.
Yeah.
And he and I were both talking. We agreed, said, look, when we find the frequency that these voices use to communicate, we're going to be on the verge of having real-time two-way communication with the other side. So we have so far to go. We know so little, and we just have so far to go. And I think the thing that hinders us in that regard is, science is so hostile to the paranormal.
Yeah.
And people like myself, psychics and mediums, are at odds with the scientific realm because we've been made fun of and been denigrated. And you look at people like, the amazing Randy, who I'll talk about in my upcoming book, and so on and so forth. And, they're not skeptics, they're cynics. And
Yeah.
they go into it with their mind made up that there's no such thing and it can't be possible, even though, and I write about my upcoming book that's coming out this year, Randy actually experienced the legitimate deal, the real thing, and admitted it was the real deal, and then turned around and dismissed it all. It was really a crazy, fascinating story. So that's coming up in my latest book. But that's what happened.
It's a shame because because you have the whole skeptic community, and I worked with a guy who would actually go to the skeptic conferences and all that, and he would tell me because we were actually trapped in a room together for like a month and a half. We were working on a project together, and he was a nice guy. He was a nice guy, and he would tell me we'd have some interesting discussions, and he would tell me, I've experienced things that you would call paranormal, but I won't ever call it that. I'm like, why not? It's like, I was like, what would you call it? He's like, just something I can't yet explain.
Right.
And it's like, well, why wouldn't you then call it paranormal? If
Paranormal.
you can't explain
Exactly.
it? Yeah.
Exactly.
And what's crazy about Randy is, because he had that whole, $1 million whatever deal.
Yeah.
And you would get guys that or even gals that they would get so far, like have so many things that would they would be on point.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there would be like that one, and he'd be like, oh, that's it, you're done. And it's like, it's one out of however many. So you take a test in school, and it's like, I got 95% of the test, but I failed because I missed on that one.
Exactly. Yeah. The interesting thing, I was on a radio show in New York when we lived in New York, and the host called me one day, and I was like, oh, hey, how you doing? We were blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, geez, are we supposed to be on the air today? I was like all panicked all of a sudden. He's like, no. He said, I'm just calling to ask if you can be on the air with me for guess who I'm going to have on the air. And I was like, so I may have made a couple of guesses. I don't remember. And he said, Randy. And I said, the amazing Randy? Are you kidding me? And he's like, yeah. He said, I need you to be on the air to give this guy a run for his money. I was like, oh, man. So I checked my schedule, and I was crestfallen because there was absolutely no way that I could change my schedule to be on the air. So he said, well, at least give me a couple of questions to ask Randy. And I said, okay. So here's the first question. Ask him about this guy, and I write about this at length in the upcoming book, The Kansas Goes, when I talk about Randy. I said, ask him about this guy that Randy said was batting 1,000, just like you said, Mike. Yeah. And then he got one thing wrong, and Randy said it's all wrong. So I said, okay, ask him about that. And then I said, ask him this question, which I always ask everybody that claims to be a skeptic or whatever. I said, ask him this. In your heart of hearts, if you're totally honest, haven't you ever had at least one experience in your life that you can't explain by rational means? So he said, okay. So the interview came and went, and he called me back and he said, wow, man. He said, he said, I asked Randy in detail about the guy that you saw. And this guy was on Randy's TV special.
Okay.
And he said, I asked Randy about this guy. And he said, well, all this is set up in advance and I make the rules. And the rules are that if one thing's wrong, everything's wrong. Just like you said, Mike.
Yeah.
And, it's like, God, like you said, I scored 95% and failed the test. It's like, how is that possible? And so he said, and then I asked him your question about in your heart of hearts, if you're honest. And he said, Randy was like almost just angry and said, no, next question.
All right, go for it, Victoria. I know you have a bunch of questions.
Let's go.
Who, me? I never.
Yeah, you're up.
I'm a skeptic.
Yeah, there you go. You're in the batter's box, Victoria.
I live in the woo-woo. I openly embrace the woo-woo here. Diamondbacks 25. I'm just putting that out there now.
There you go.
I didn't say what they're going to do. Are you familiar with, Ron Yacovetti and Tony Ratham? They do the SATCOM project, and they're actually doing live back and forth communications. They found the frequency.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So check them out. There's some friends of mine. They're doing a lot of good work. But anyway, I wanted to ask you about 20 more ways to increase your psychic abilities, and you're coming out with a new book. Can you give us a hint of what the next 20 ways are?
Oh yeah, I can tell you the first chapter is on grounding, using the grounding technique. There's going to be this is all different techniques that I haven't written about before. There's going to be a meditation in there that I teach. And this is not original with me. This has been around, forever, as long as I can determine. But this is my spin on it, my take on it. And the beauty of this meditation is that, people complain, I have to sit cross-legged, and I have to light candles, and I have to do this, and I have to have incense, and I have to have music in the background.
Your belly, yeah.
And I have to focus. I have to concentrate, and I can't focus. I can't concentrate. My mind wanders. The beauty of this meditation is that it's self-working, and it doesn't matter if your mind wanders during the meditation. As a matter of fact, that's a built-in component of the meditation. And this meditation is going to teach you not only to relax. If you have insomnia, it's going to help you go back to sleep. If you're tired, it's going to recharge you. And then I put more spiritual, more paranormal components into it to tell you how to use this meditation to get deeper into spiritual guidance, into manifestations, all these types of things. So those are a few of the things that are going to come up in the next 20 ways book.
Cool. So this is a meditation you created?
No. It's been around for a long, long time. But this is just my spin on it. I took it and I said, okay, I've got this. Let's do this with it. Where can we go from there? Can we apply it to this? Can we enhance it? And so I put my own spin on everything.
Okay, because I meditate every day or every night, I guess, until his lordship steps on my stomach or my head or something, and it brings me out of it.
There you go.
Cats, what can you do with them?
Yep. Well, the beauty of this meditation is, like I say, your mind can wander. It doesn't matter. You can be disturbed, interrupted, and go right back into it. It's really a beautiful, almost self-working thing. It's one of the greatest meditations that anybody will encounter. You don't have to have any special gear, or any special this, any special that. And so people are going to enjoy this next book as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's interesting, Victoria, just for a second, because I know you have more questions, but on that note, because I've known people that have worked or have done transcendental meditation, and when your mind wanders, they say, bring it back to whatever, and kind of come back into it. But I have found, because I'll do a daily morning meditation, that when my mind wanders like that, it usually keys in on something that I should know. That this is something that
you should pay attention to.
Yeah, it's like a message or something, or even if it's something inane, like it's a task that I should be doing that day. Oh, hey, Mike, remember to do this? Like, oh yeah, I
Oh,
forgot
yeah.
I should be
Yeah.
doing that. And so
Exactly.
yeah, so I think it's really important that even
It
if
is.
it's not, you know,
We
something
have to allow for that
groundbreaking,
inspiration
yeah.
in meditation and for that guidance in meditation. We have to allow for that. You know,
Yeah.
people get so hidebound with meditation that they think, okay, I've got to have this focus and I've got to achieve this thing
Mhm.
and nothing can interrupt me or disturb me or whatever. And a lot of times the other side is like, hey,
Yeah. Hey,
over
here's the
here.
thing that you should be remembering. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly
And that's what
right.
happens a lot when I do my meditations. It's like a remembrance. Like, hey, Mike, you forgot to write this down. You need to go do this. And a lot of time, and when that happens, I will actually break my meditation early. So it's like I don't forget to do that, and I'll go write it
Yep.
down. I need to do this. Boom. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a friend of mine. She's like, I wish I could be like you. I can't control my mind like you do. I'm like, no, it's just the opposite. You let go of control. So
Mhm.
how important do you think trust is? And I've also noticed, and this is just for me, that whenever I start working in the woo-woo or meditation or anything like that, animals seem to come to me. Like we had so many
Yeah.
cats, they would all come and sit next to you. Do you think that also hits a vibration or a frequency with them that brings them to you, or are they just there for the ride?
No, it hits a vibration and a frequency that brings them to you because animals are so sensitive. You know, animals sense the other side. Animals see the other side.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, that's one thing that it does attract them and they respond to that. And when you're connecting with that energy and then kind of emitting that energy, they're going to come in and respond to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're fun. My father passed. Oh, we lost Mike. My father passed a few years ago, and Toby, my cat, was just staring at something one day. So I got my dowsing rods out, and I said, "Is my dad here?" And they said, "Yes."
Yeah.
And I said, "Can you point to where they are?" And they swung around right to exactly where he was looking. I'm like, I knew it.
Exactly.
I knew he
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
But, so another thing I heard, and I just heard a little snippet of this. I was trying to catch up on interviews and things you've done in the past. You mentioned something. I think it was for the History Channel with John Wilkes Booth.
Yeah. We did the History Channel pilot was titled On the Trail of the Assassin. And what I did was psychically explore the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So I went into it from a psychic perspective. And the really neat thing about this, and I write in detail in this about my second book, A Knock in the Attic. The really neat thing about this was that we got to go, thanks to the cachet of Atlas Media in New York City, and thanks to the cachet of the History Channel, we got to go to Ford's Theater, the Peterson House, Bud House, all these places without any tourists, without anyone there. We were the only ones there, me and the film crew, and the docents would unlock the place, let us in. We had free reign for as long as we wanted with no time constraints. And they locked the door when we got in. The public couldn't enter. The docents disappeared. And it was me and my psychic gifts roaming the place at will and telling everybody what I found psychically. And the really great thing about this, what made me the ideal candidate to do this, the History Channel had auditioned several psychics for this, and then they settled on me for the pilot. And what made it so great is because I am the world's worst student of history. I hate history. I don't like history. I was the guy in school that I literally wrote dates on my hand in ink to try and pass the test, literally. Okay. And
I never did that.
I was the perfect guy for this because I didn't know beans. I knew that, okay, let's see, John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln at Ford's Theater. And that's my sum total understanding of history as far as that event goes.
You know what the problem with that, John?
Yeah.
It wasn't you. You had terrible teachers, because history teachers need to be storytellers.
That's it.
And you
I
probably did not
didn't
have
have
history teachers that
storytellers.
were storytellers.
I had fact givers. I didn't have storytellers.
Yep.
So anyways, they were like, oh, this guy is perfect because he doesn't know beans. And if he gets anything and it's accurate and we can validate it, we know it's coming from his psychic gift. So I had a real goal in shooting this pilot. This is the first time I'd ever done TV. And I said, okay, my goal is to make everybody on this crew believers. And there were people that were like, okay, we're here for the paycheck, you know, glad for the job, but don't believe in the paranormal, don't believe in psychics. But hey, I'm getting to film this week. I'm getting paid. So thank you, John. I was like, no. You're going to believe by the end of this thing.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
not only did I exercise my psychic gift for the investigation, I exercised my psychic gift for everybody on the crew while we were doing things. And Mike can validate this, for anybody that thinks TV is glamorous, no. We were like, you know, cast call was at 6 a.m. and you jumped in the van and started filming, and you filmed till 6 p.m., 9 p.m., midnight. So, you know, you had 18-hour days filming and all this stuff. And a funny aside, when we were in New York fixing to take off, I was going over and started to grab the equipment, the cameras and stuff to help the film crew load up the van. And my producer ran over to me. He was like, no. I was like, what? What's the matter? Because I'm born in West Texas. I was raised in West Texas. And
Okay.
I'm like, you know, you see a woman coming out of the grocery store with sacks of groceries, you go grab them, you carry them to the car for her. Here, ma'am, let me put those in. So that's the way I'm raised. So I'm like, I'm going to help the crew load up. And he's like, no, for God's sake, no. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he said, okay, if you pick up, and those cameras, oh my God, those cameras are heavy.
They are
like,
heavy, yeah.
You pick up the camera and you strain yourself or hurt yourself, and we have to delay filming, that costs everybody, and there goes our budget, and nobody's making money, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay, never thought about that. And he said, you pick up stuff, start loading it, you get all sweaty and grimy. We can't film you when you're sweaty and grimy, so chill out. The talent doesn't do stuff. And I was like, okay, the talent, whatever. So that was part of it. And anyways, we go to these locations. We have the cachet of Atlas Media, the History Channel, to get in there. And I would do things like on the way, I said I had to make believers out of everybody. While we were traveling to locations, I was sitting next to my producer, and he got a phone call from a friend of his. And they were talking, and, you know, I don't normally interrupt people, but the other side gave me something. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Here's my chance. So I tapped him on the leg, and I said, listen, I said, sorry, but I said, you're talking to a male friend of yours. And I said, he's just had his, I can't remember who it was, mother, grandmother, aunt, whatever it was. But at the time, I gave him specifically who it was. And I said, and he's the executor of the will. And I said, ask him if that's happened. And he said, okay. So he said, listen, he said, have you just had so-and-so pass? And the guy was like, how'd you know that? And he was like, and are you the executor of the will? And he's like, yeah, I am. But he said, how the heck do you know that? And he goes, well, we're shooting this pilot with a psychic. And he just interrupted me. And he's like, I said, okay, now tell him this. I said, tell him to make sure he goes through this will and that every T is crossed and every I is dotted. He's like, okay, so I'll tell him that. So I eventually did that for everybody in the crew. And by the end of the thing, everybody in the crew were believers. So that was kind of my personal mission to say, hey, look, the other side is real. These gifts are real. We can tap into them. We can communicate with the other side and make our lives better, make other people's lives better. But the great thing was we went into these places, and me not knowing any history, not knowing anything, we got several things that we were able to validate. We had access to all the best Lincoln experts. We had some of the Lincoln experts on film with us that we interviewed, and we had access to every type of research and everything there was. And we were able to validate all of the things that I saw and picked up on psychically. For example, we went in under Ford's Theater. You go to the bottom, there's a museum down there, and they have Lincoln artifacts, and some are real, some are reproductions. It doesn't matter with me because I can tune on anything and get it no matter what it is. So they had the door there from the presidential booth, and there was a hole drilled in it, and it said, Booth drilled this hole. So that he could look in and see where Lincoln was at and see when to burst in and shoot him and all this. And I looked at that and I said, no, Booth didn't drill this hole. And that's what it said on the plaque. It said, Booth drilled this hole. I said, Booth did not drill this hole. Booth had this hole drilled by someone who worked in the theater that wouldn't arouse suspicion by being there. But I said, Booth himself did not drill this hole. Yeah. And sure enough, through research, we found out that Booth did not drill that hole, that it was drilled at the order of the theater owner by one of the construction workers in the theater that drilled the hole. So we were able to validate things like that and bring out things like
somebody that was involved with the conspiracy so that he could use the hole.
Yeah. So it was,
Okay,
it was really fascinating. And then we also caught paranormal phenomena on film, which was really, really great. We had, I connected with the spirit of Mrs. Mudd when we went to the Mudd house, and there was a lot of phenomena that went on there. And one of the great things was that I said, Mrs. Mudd is over here to my right. I said, she's walking through me. We were filming at night. And I said, she's walking toward me. And I said, now she's walking through me. I feel her pass through me going out the other side. And we were using a FLIR camera. We may have been, this is so long ago, we may have been one of the first to use FLIR in paranormal investigations. And FLIR is forward-looking infrared radiation. We had the camera set so that cold would be black, heat would be white. And they were filming me with a regular camera and with a FLIR camera when I said that. And as I said that on the FLIR camera, you can see small female footsteps in period era shoes in black walk across the floor towards me as I'm saying that. So,
yeah, I wanted to ask you about the Mud House because I've been there a few times. I used to live in Maryland.
Oh yeah,
and with my research for Ghosts of Maryland, I was there a couple of times, and I actually have a pretty rare photograph because of the fact that they always try to set up everything to be pristine. And I got in there one day early with the docents, before they made everything nice for the public, where in the John Wilkes Booth room where they have the impression of the bed, and they fix it up in the morning to make it look nice, and the docents, oh man, you look and see, that's what I was talking about. I'm like, don't. He went over to fix it. I'm like, don't mess with. I want to take a photo. So actually, I have a photo of that impression of the body. But yeah, I wanted to ask you about that house because, every time I've been there, I've always had some sort of technological issue. Like, one time, my photos, all of a sudden, all the photos are gone. Another time I went there, all the audio was gone. There was always some sort of technological issue every time I went to the Mud House.
Yeah, there's powerful energy there. It stays. And I have this thing where wherever I go, I attract paranormal manifestations. I attract entities and things. And it was so funny because when we went there, not only did all these things manifest, but when the docents, or rather the reenactors, went back to shoot the reenactment part of the pilot, stuff would move on their own. And they caught it on camera. They caught things moving around on their own from where I'd been. But there is a lot of energy there. And one of the funniest things was one of the Mudd descendants. He's a caretaker of the grounds.
He's a descendant.
And we interviewed him a little bit. And he had gone out that night while we were filming. We were filming at night. And he had gone out. The sheriffs patrol the property. It's a national landmark. The sheriffs patrol it. And so he had gone out to tell the sheriffs. He said, look, all these cars here, and if you see lights on, we're filming tonight. The History Channel's here. And so he said, just want you to know, so nobody's on the property where they're not supposed to be or whatever. And so he told the sheriff that. And then he went out to lock up all the outside buildings, make sure everything was secure. And he came back in, and he was white, and he was shaking. And we were like, hey, man, what's going on? You okay? And we were like, and we got this on camera. I don't think we used it in the pilot, which, like I say, unfortunately never aired. And we're like, what's the matter? And he said, I went outside. I turned everything off. I turned all the lights off. I locked every single door. I double checked that every single door was locked. He said, I went out just now to check the grounds. All the doors were unlocked. Some of them were open. The lights were on. And then this one outdoor kitchen, the water was running in full blast. So he was just like totally freaked out. So yeah, there's a ton of manifestations there, and I suspect always will be.
Yeah. Well, what's supposed to be the name of the show?
The Psychic
On the Trail of the Assassin.
Well, that was the episode name. The show was going to be called Psychic History.
Psychic
History, and the first episode was on the Trail of the Assassin. And so I was supposed to go from location to location, giving my psychic input into all these historical events. And it would have been a really great show. I wish it would have aired, and we have several theories as to why it didn't. But you being in the industry, that things are in the can, and people go, nope.
That definitely happens. I've been involved in a couple of those. Go ahead, Victoria.
Can I get back to John Wilkes Booth? Because I had a question, actually.
Okay, sure.
And now that you said you're from Texas, come on. Now we're on the same line here.
Granbury.
Where I live, what'd you say?
You're gonna go to Granbury. You're going to the Granbury Theater. Come on.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask, because I
Yeah.
have connected with John Wilkes Booth here. What is your opinion that he did not die in Maryland or wherever, that he actually escaped and came to Texas?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I
wherever.
don't
Some
think he
Yankee
did.
place.
Yeah, I don't think he did, because we went to the spot where the showdown was with the barn and everything, and we were there on the actual site. And psychically, I determined that they got him there. They shot him there. He died there. Yeah.
Okay, what about Jesse James? Because he's allegedly here also.
Oh yeah, no, Jesse James, I've never really tuned into or done anything with, so don't have any input on that right now. That'd be something I'd have to tune in on. Yeah.
Yeah, because John Wilkes Booth is all around. He is running all around Granbury.
Yeah, talk about him with the Granbury Theater. What's interesting is because the persona that he was supposed to have taken in Oklahoma, and, I forget the name of something George, but
He went by John St. John.
Yeah, John St. John there in Granbury.
John St. Helen.
But when he was in supposedly when he was in Oklahoma, he went by a different name. It was something George.
Yeah. They have that
Boston Corbett, who is the one who shot him in Virginia, also died in that same town in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is with a lot of these personages like that from history, they just love to have them. No, he never got killed. He escaped. He lived somewhere else. He had another life. And I don't buy it. I just I think we have to accept history as it is. Yeah, you got shot and killed there. That was it in the story. And it's just somehow romantic that no, they escaped and they lived a whole other life under a different name and all this. And it's like, I don't buy it.
Okay. Well, I invite you to come explore with me sometime.
There you go.
There you go.
Come. We'll have fun here. There's people hanging in the trees. There's gunfights everywhere. Okay, anyway, it's a Wild West town. I did want to ask you just like a little one-off questions. You mentioned dream interpretations in one of your books. What is your opinion on? Okay, long story short, my friend is a psychiatrist or psychologist, whatever, and she was doing dream interpretation. I overheard her on the phone. She was, let me Google it and see. So she Googles it instead of applying to what the situation is that the person was going through. Book analysis versus subjective. Which one do you fall in?
Well, book analysis is just that. You go to a book and you get a predetermined answer that is supposed to apply every single time. Right. And that's not the case. It can't be that way. It's like an analogy that I give in my book, 20 Ways, as far as dream interpretation goes. If you mention red high heels to the typical red-blooded straight American male, he's going to say, hot damn, man, that's sexy. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Need some red high heels for my girl.
No.
No.
Kelly Pickler.
No.
If you mention red high heels to a waitress, she's going to have an entirely different interpretation. I've been on my feet all day. My feet hurt. My feet are tired. The last thing I'm going to do is wear red high heels. So the best interpreter of our dreams is ourselves. Okay. And we also have to learn that interpretations of our dreams vary as we age, as we have life experience, as we gain spiritual input and understanding. If we dream of horses in our 20s and we discern that it has a certain meaning or interpretation for our lives, in our 30s or 40s, horses may all of a sudden have an entirely different meaning. So we can't go by book interpretations because things are in flux, things change, things are personal. And so that's what I teach in my book is this is how to learn how to interpret what is personal to you, what's specific to you, what has meaning to you in your dreams, and how to figure that out, and then how to apply that. And it's I have to tell this story. It's such a beautiful story, and this illustrates how things can come to us in our dreams that are really practical. I had a friend, and I write about this in the book. I had a friend that worked for the NSA, the National Security Agency, and and he was a code breaker.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Man in black.
And he was a
we all
code
work
breaker
for the government.
And he told me, he said, Don,
I supported the code breakers. Yeah.
There you go. And he said, John, we had this code come in, and he said we had all our computers on it, everything on it, all our best minds on it. I was working on this thing. He said we couldn't break it. And he said I became obsessed with it. And he said it began to affect me in a deleterious way. He said my health started to suffer because I was so obsessed with this thing, and I would exhaust myself trying to break this code. And he said I came in one night, and he said I walked to the foot of my bed, and he said I turned around and placed my calves and the back of my legs up against the footboard. And he said I just fell over backward into the bed from that position with my suit and tie on, my shoes on, and just immediately fell into this exhausted sleep. And he said, in my dream, I began to have this lucid dream. A lucid dream is a dream in which you're aware you're dreaming. And he said, I had this lucid dream, and there was like, you see the, in New York, you see the ticker go across the thing, and it has all these messages lit up and so on and so forth, the stock market and all these things. And he says, so there's this thing, this lighted message board. And he said, across the display come the characters of this code. And he's like, oh my God, now it's got me in my sleep. I can't get away from this thing even in my sleep. I'm going to go crazy. And he said, then below it come this other lighted message board. And across that came the letters in clear, the letters in English that revealed the code, that broke the code. And he said, I woke up, and he said, I had a pad and a paper by my bedside. And he said, I wrote down what I remembered. I rushed into the office, and that broke the code. Wow. So our dreams are important. Our dreams are valuable. Yeah. We can get great information there, but it can't be a by the book interpretation. We have to learn how to interpret that, how to make it personal, how to make it accurate.
Okay, because I had a lucid dream last night about Mike's Aunt Peg falling off a mountain. Mike doesn't have
I don't
an
have an Aunt Peg. Yeah, so that's a little
yet.
But what's interesting about the mountain, but the mountain part is kind of interesting because there is a Rick Secker point on Mount Rainier that my Annie Kay had been to. And
a three-letter name.
There's a photo there of her at Rick Secker Point at Mount Rainier.
There you go.
I don't know.
There you go.
Because I remember in my dream, I was like, oh, I need to ask Mike about this because I'm dreaming about Mike's Aunt Peg falling off a mountain, or Pam. It was a three-letter name. That's all I remember. Anyway, what is your take? Personally, let me back up. Take two. On salt and sage, I personally think they are tulpas because people have put so much belief into it, but other people swear by it that, writing on a bay leaf will protect you from this, or, sage will protect you from that, when it was really the plague doctors putting that in their nose.
There are certain elements, certain magical things that do have an inherent quality. Salt, for example, salt is charged with this inherent psychic energy and this inherent paranormal energy, and we can utilize those things. But it's, again, people need to understand it's not automatic. You don't just go grab the salt and go throw it around and go, okay, I'm okay. You have to do these things with understanding. You have to do these things with intent, with focus, and with energy. And when you understand that, you really connect with these things. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions. And you have to get past the point that you go through the motions and get into the understanding of what the thing is, why you're doing it that way, what the proposed outcome is going to be. And you have to learn to really activate and work with these things, because these things do have an inherent energy. I tell people, I say, look, it's a dance. We have energy and power and focus and will and intent and purpose. So do these things. And if we understand them and work with them and connect with them, we have that marriage between the two of us, then that's when things really begin to happen, and we can really create things and make things happen.
So would that be the same as taking a candle, charging it and dressing it, versus going to Dollar Tree and getting one and saying, I have a white candle?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I have an entire chapter of candle magic in the book as well. So people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And what about scrying? See, I told you I have a checklist.
Yeah, you do.
You always do. Yeah.
Do you scry?
Yeah. Scrying, crystal ball, a puddle of water, a mirror, any reflective surface, anything like that. You can scry in anything, but it's easiest to use, a crystal ball. I have a chapter on scrying in the book. And, you can use a crystal ball, you can use a bowl of water. And the thing about it is, I tell people how to scry. You don't just, okay, I've got a crystal ball, now what? Well, you have to look into the crystal ball in a certain way, with a certain intent, with a certain technique and a certain understanding, and then learn how to focus on that, activate that energy, connect with that energy, and then interpret what you see and apply that to your life and go on from there. So all of these things I teach in my book step by step. And again, I teach people the how to connect with this, the how, the why, what you do with it, and how you apply it. That was my main focus in this, is like, look, like you say, it's not enough to go to the dollar store and buy a white candle and go, okay, I got a candle. You have to understand what to do with that candle and how to do it. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have one last question that I'll release. No, I forgot. Shoot. Hold on.
Oh, one last question. Oh, wait. Yeah. Okay.
I always forget the last one because it's the best one. When you're first learning to, or when an individual is first learning to develop their psychic abilities, how important is disconnecting from society, basically being in isolation, listening to your own thoughts? How do you learn to trust what the voices are really telling you? All right. How do you go about doing that?
Two-part question. The most important thing is disconnect from society. Turn off the TV, mute the cell phone, turn off the radio, turn off the music, turn off the iPod, whatever. Get in silence, because if you and me and Mike are at a party and I'm across the room and it's a loud party and everybody's talking, everybody's laughing, maybe there's some music in the background going on, whoop, whoop, all this. And I'm like, Mike, Victoria, come over here. There's some great tacos. Mike, Victoria. And you can't hear a word I'm saying.
There's some great wine. That's what we're
There you go. And you can't hear a word I'm saying because of the noise, right? Now, if all of a sudden the party falls silent, I can almost whisper and you can hear me across the room. I say, hey guys, great tacos over here. And it's the same way with the spiritual realm. If you've got the phone interrupting you, if you're scrolling, if you're listening to music, if you're doing this, if you're doing that, you can't hear the other side, because the other side responds to us in silence. We get that quietness to where we can hear. And so that's the supremely important thing, is that we do have that disconnect. And then as far as we know, is this my imagination, or is this coincidence, or am I really connecting with something? That comes with experience. And that experience comes from that silence, learning to listen to yourself, to your intuition, learning to listen to the other side, learning to trust that voice. And over the years, this is my life. This is all I've ever done. And I've done it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for my entire life. So I know the other side. I know that voice. I know that guidance. I know when it's correct. I know when it's right. I know when I can rely on it for myself and for my clients. So again, it goes back to the weightlifting thing, to the gym. That consistency, that practice, that knowing and understanding yourself, understanding the way you connect with the other side, understanding the way the other side connects with you, who's there for you, what deceased loved ones, what guides, what spirits are around you, and learning to connect with that. So you go, okay, now I know who's speaking with me, and I know I can trust it, and I know it's the truth. And then taking what they say and doing it. It doesn't do any good to hear it if you don't act on it.
That's it. That's the key. I mean, my little voice has told me to do some weird things, and I'm like, okay. And they've always
worked out. It always worked out. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's getting to that trusting part.
Well,
it's like jumping off the monkey bars, there's nothing else to hold on to.
One time I had I wanted to get on TV so bad. This is way back a long time ago, decades ago. And I wanted to get on TV so badly because I saw all these ghost hunter shows, so-called, and I saw they were doing everything wrong, and they were misleading people, and they were doing all these horrific things. Like, oh, dear God, if I could just get on TV and have a wider platform and be able to tell people, well, it's really like to connect with the other side and to do this. Because it's not this scary, demonic, malevolent, evil thing. It's this beautiful, wonderful, life-saving, guiding thing. And so,
and unfortunately, John, that does, and that's the problem, is that the demonic stuff sells, even though that's not what's going on.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly
it's unfortunate. Right. Yeah.
Go ahead. And so I told the guys, I said, guys, I need to get on the TV. So my wife and I went on a cruise, and we came back, and I had this email from, who was it? It was David Hockenberry, John Hockenberry. Remember the guy in the wheelchair that was a reporter? His last name was Hockenberry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I don't remember if it was David Hockenberry or John Hockenberry. Anyways, he was the reporter in the wheelchair, and he did prime time or 48 hours or whatever it was that came on at night. And I had an email from him, and it was like, we want to interview you for prime time, whatever it was. And I was like, holy cow, this is it. This is it. Thank you, guys. And I yelled at the wife, come look at this, come look at this. And we were just all ecstatic until we got down to the end of the email. And we were back from the cruise 3 days too late to appear on the show.
Oh.
And I was like, guys, what the, this is what I've been asking for. This is what I've been wanting. What in the world?
Pull the rug right off from under you. Yeah.
Pull the rug right off from under me. And so the guys went, just wait. You're going to be so glad you didn't get this. And I was like, what? This is what I've been asking for. This is like one of the biggest national platforms that there could be. And all they would say was, just wait. You'll be so glad you didn't get this. So this makes no sense. So I'm running around grumpy for a couple of weeks. And so one afternoon, one Saturday afternoon, I'm watching TV. And I'm flipping through channels. And lo and behold, here's John Edward. We all know John Edward, the famous medium, being interviewed by Hockenberry. And I'm grousing to the other side. I'm like, guys, Edward's got New York Times best-selling books. He doesn't need to be interviewed by Hockenberry. I need to be interviewed by Hockenberry. And they didn't say anything. And I was like, and so I'm watching the show, and I turn the volume up, and I'm listening to the interview. And Hockenberry's doing everything in his power to make John Edward look like the biggest fraud and phony and con on the planet that there is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, that would have been my introduction to the viewing audience, was being made look like this big scam artist. And the guys went, told you he's going to be glad you missed it.
Yeah.
So we have to learn to trust that voice on the other side, because they can see a lot further down the road than we can.
Yeah. Sometimes the universe will save you from those sorts of things.
Exactly.
Yeah. You don't know until it actually occurs.
That's it. A lot of times we get this guidance from the other side that we don't realize we're getting until it happens. And I write about that in the latest book, The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock. There was an instance there that I received this very specific compulsion to do this certain thing that made no sense at all to me. And it turned out to be something that eventually saved someone's life. And then it dawned on me, it was like, oh, that's why. So, we get guidance, we don't even know we're getting it.
I wanted to ask you about this book, because it seems a bit different from your others, other than aesthetically it seems different. The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock. What's this is your latest?
Yeah.
What's going on here in this book? We only got a few minutes left here. Yeah.
Okay. This book, again, I'm writing about paranormal experiences from my life that I've never written about before. In this book, I think it's one of my more open books emotionally, because I write about things like the death of my mother and the spiritual perspectives on all of these things that I've never written about before. I write about things that there's always sacred moments in our lives, and there's always these spiritual experiences around us, and we will recognize them and accept them. But some of these experiences can be very heartrending, and they can open our eyes to truths that we may not want to see or may not have been aware of before, and that affect us deeply. And I write about that aspect of things in the book, like writing with ghost angels and spirits of the dead. There's some poignant moments in there for sure, but it's mostly kind of an upbeat. Here's this tough old biker since the age of 15, and he's ridden this current bike 4.5 times around the circumference of the earth, and blah, blah, blah. And it's got that kind of vibe. And then the other books, but this book I think is a little softer, a little more tender perhaps. And that's kind of where this is coming from. And some things that I haven't learned or experienced before, like the Crying Tree, the Magic Rock. These are not metaphors. These are literal things that happen that have introduced me to an entire new segment of spirituality and paranormality that I hadn't experienced quite this way before. And it's taught me a lot of new life lessons, and those are things I pass on in the book.
All right.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to that. I'm trying to get some of the comments here. So Barb
Okay.
Kennedy, my first real because we only have a couple minutes left. My first real history teacher was Mr. Smith, junior high, Amboy, Illinois. He always told us history is a story that he explained with a voice and was very interesting. I could pass tests without saying. And John, I would say, with what you're doing with, with the history we were talking about before, John Wilkes Booth and all that.
Right.
Even though, and that was a problem with a lot of history teachers, name, dates, whatever, you got to memorize. But when you provide a voice for those of the past, I think that's what's important. What in one sense, with the paranormal, for us, we've had experiences and we're sharing in those experiences, and realizing that we're not alone. Other people have had these experiences, but for those who have already passed, and like you as a psychic medium or paranormal investigators, we're providing a voice. For those who have passed.
And we have to be the storyteller for those people.
Yeah, exactly.
And, that's the beautiful thing. The feedback that I've gotten from my readers is that, and it's a label, a handle, a title that I'm so honored and so proud to have, is that people tell me, John, you're the storyteller. You're you're the guy that tells these stories. You're the storyteller, and that's become so important to me. And so that's the focus I've tried to remain honest to, in all my books and in everything I do, is to tell that story.
Yeah, you become the voice for them. They don't really have a voice per se anymore, and they're trying to get that across, and they need somebody like you to be able to provide that voice, which is wonderful. Yeah. So, all right, John, where can people, because we're down here at the end, where can people find your work, your books, all of that fun stuff?
My books are available at all online booksellers: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Apple Books, PAL Books, everywhere online. You can go to my website, johnrussellauthor.com, and it's got all my books listed there with links to buy them, endorsements, blurbs, so on and so forth, books that are upcoming. And for those that might want a psychic reading, go to johnrussell.net. So it's johnrussell.net for the psychic work, more information about that, and then johnrussellauthor.com for the books.
Yeah, we got one last thing here this is our chat moderator, Alina. She says, my grandma, whom I was very close to, passed unexpectedly January 23rd. Very sorry to hear that, Alina. My grief has been weighing me down. Do you possibly have any advice or words of comfort?
Yeah, condolences to you, and know that your grandmother is okay. That doesn't repair that sense of separation. And to repair that sense of separation and grief, the best way to overcome that is to think about her, to attempt to communicate with her, and she will communicate with you and let you know that she's still around you. And the importance of this is, don't discount anything or think that anything is coincidental, because I've had so many people say, oh, I smelled my grandmother's perfume the other day, but that was just my imagination. It's not your imagination. It's not a coincidence. It's not. This is the reality of them communicating to you from the other side and letting you know they're still there. And you have to work your way through the grief. The grief is real. Grief is a river, and you're on one bank, and healing's on the other side, on the other bank. And the only way across is to wade through that river of grief. That's the only way you do it. You deal with it, you acknowledge it, you feel it. You don't try and escape it. You wade through that river and you get to the other side. You know that every step you make is going to make you stronger. But realize that she's okay. Realize that she's smiling at you, looking down on you, and that she will communicate with you. And whatever sound you get, whatever movement you get, whatever aroma you get, don't discount it. Don't think it's your imagination. Realize that's her communication to you, and cherish that and accept that, and you'll get more.
And our hearts are with you, Alina. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank you, John, so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, guys. It's been my honor, my pleasure. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And we do have the, for those members of the Connected Universe portal, we do have the after show coming up here right after. So for everybody else, we will catch you actually not next week, because I will be traveling next week. So the week after, which is, let me look at the calendar here real quick. Not the 26th, but the 5th of March, we will be back here. I'm going to be out in, visiting my kids, Oklahoma City, and then I'm going to be at Missouri Paracon
Yeah,
which is in
baby.
Kansas City. First ever, it's the biggest Paracon they've ever held out there. First ever for this particular group. So Jesse Limecooler's heading that up. Belvoir Winery, which one of my very first big events was the first event they ever held at Belvoir Winery out there. And this was like, oh my gosh, like 2010, 2011, something like that. And but they're doing a big thing at the one of the casinos out there, Missouri Paracon. So be sure to check that out. So yeah, we will be back. Check it again, March 5th. So join us then. And that'll do it for this evening. So for those that are members of the portal, stay with us. For everybody else, until next time, time really exists.